Square Enix is one of the most infamous companies that has had their share of mobile gaming ventures, and more often than not, they turn out to be duds. Here's a list of some of the gacha games Square Enix has shut down. In addition, they also have a poor track record of game preservation, whether that may be an offline mode or official documentation of a game's story and lore, so that people will always have a way to revisit it. Many of the creative endeavors their past dead projects have had will be laid to rest in the gacha graveyard, with no way for newcomers to know that they even existed. Just recently, they have released their latest project in the mobile Final Fantasy series, Dissidia Duellum. I played the game for about a week, and I'm here to tell you that the reputation of Square Enix in the mobile gaming space remains as spotty as ever. While the game feels like it has a well-polished and fair PvP gameplay loop, this game and its many systems and overall quality feels quite subpar compared to what gets released these days. Honestly, I've seen a fair share of gacha games that feel like money funnels for capturing whales, and Duellum is quite an interesting study. So let's see exactly what the game does right or wrong. To start, I'm not too familiar with the Final Fantasy franchise. I'm mainly here to judge the game mechanically, so anything involving commenting on the story and lore will be skipped. Booting up the game for the first time, there was a prompt that asked me what Final Fantasy I liked the best when creating an account, and well, the list went on for way longer than I expected. It's hard to find an entry point into the series, but I'll probably get there at some point. Anyways, this is also not the first Final Fantasy game that's in the form of a mobile gacha. Far from it, actually. Prior to Duellum, there was another game in the Dissidia subcategory of the franchise called Opera Omnia that supposedly had an unusually generous system for players in which it enjoyed a small but dedicated player base. Unfortunately, that one was shut down, and right before the full story was able to be concluded. Any content relating to this game is now lost without any form of an offline mode or story continuation. Duellum, on the other hand, places the Final Fantasy cast in a modern setting. That's really all I can say regarding its overall premise, so we'll have to take a closer look at the gameplay portion. Conceptually, I actually quite like the framework the game has, and without diving into the higher ranks, I can say that I did have some fun as a beginner. But know this, there's a reason this game got on my radar among all the other low-effort gachas that exist out there. The framework of the game is not one that promotes fair play, and its more insidious practices are hidden beneath a separate layer. I'll go through exactly why I think the game's systems are quite predatory and why these games exist. In the ranked PvP mode, you'll queue up with a team of 2 other players, then you'll compete against the opposing 3 players. How it works is that both teams try to defeat the big boss enemy, and whichever team depletes its health first wins. Many people describe it as a PvEvP system. In order to damage the boss, you have to collect bravery points. To do that, you run over to one of the 5 crystals on the map and defeat the trash mobs near it, then capture the crystal, in which your team will get a dose of bravery. Alternatively, you can damage players from the other team, and if you defeat them, then you can take their bravery. If you're taken out yourself, you'll just respawn after a little bit, but your bravery points are reset. When bravery is full, you can enter your character's burst state and start chipping away at the boss. And if another teammate also bursts near you as well, then you do even more damage. The maps are random, and you can equip 5 different abilities to help you out. The controls are kinda weird, but there is a way to alter it in the settings. You can drag your finger to move around, then swipe your other finger anywhere else on screen to move the camera, or rapidly tap to attack manually. There's a circle around your character. When an enemy moves in range of the circle, your character will attack automatically. The characters themselves can be obtained easily enough, and they all have slightly different stats for their roles, though there are character-exclusive abilities that only they can equip. On the surface, the framework feels unique with many ways you can strategize. There's a distinct early game portion where you try to hunt down bravery from the crystals to prepare for the boss to spawn. You have the choice to try knocking out the opposing team first to plunder their bravery, or go straight to the boss yourself. You can also choose to help out your teammates to full burst before bursting yourself if you want to keep up the combo. There are also certain abilities that promote team play, like stripping defense from enemies. Expecting that much cooperation from randoms is gonna be hard, but as long as you can time your bursts, the gameplay can feel pretty satisfying. This game is only available on mobile devices, so you have to use an emulator if you want to play on PC. You also have to play it in portrait mode for some reason, even though I think having a landscape display will be more suitable for a game like this. So what's the issue here? It seems pretty standard on the surface with a PvP mode that has degrees of nuance and team play. Well, I played a decent chunk of gacha games at this point, and I have a sneaking suspicion that Square Enix's infamy in the mobile gaming space is lurking just under this pretty layer of gameplay. Let's first address the obvious. The graphical presentation looks slightly subpar for a gacha game released in 2026. We've gotten to the point where games can look better than console titles, where they're expected to have significant new content in 6-week patches. If you want to defend this by saying that Final Fantasy never had realistic graphics, that's fine. Though I'd say it's pretty clear that the story cutscenes don't contain a lot of movement to save on the budget, and that NPCs don't get the same facial animations as the actual characters. There's no character leveling, but there is something called job medals. Using these tokens that can either be used by one character or by anyone, you can roll a random medal to place in a slot. These tokens can roll certain perks to slap onto that character, all with their own rarity. These tokens can be quite limited. You can fit up to 3 in each preset, but you cannot remove a skill in a slot without replacing it. It's sort of like a transmogrification system, but with skills that give actual gameplay advantages. My main issue with Duellum is that the PvP is not just a mode in the game. It's the only mode in this game that has a meaningful progression system. There are single-player challenges, but they're not repeatable. The ranked PvP mode is the one that will give you more seasonal rewards, loot boxes that can potentially drop rare abilities, and progress towards the battle pass. There are plenty of gacha games out there that have PvP as a side mode that some players can enjoy, but it's not mandatory. Here though, not so much. One way to get more abilities is to play the ranked games to get these random loot boxes that take real-life time to unlock. Once opened, you get a random ability. The rarer ones take longer to unlock but have a higher chance to drop something better. You can also get one too even if you lose a match, just that it's very unlikely you'll get good stuff out of it. You can only queue a certain amount of these boxes at a time, with more slots being purchasable. This effectively becomes the stamina system of the game, where you'll do around 3 matches to get 3 boxes, wait for them to open, then come back and repeat again. While you can keep playing while your queue is full, you just don't get more boxes. Assuming that you have a decent win rate, you'll get many blues and golds, but you'll occasionally lose some matches and get the bad ones too. Okay, so I can make my progression smoother and efficient if I just get rid of the bad boxes so I can come back after my better loot boxes are done unlocking. One problem, you can't get rid of one for free. Your only option is to spend in-game gold to unlock it immediately. What this means is that the loot boxes from losing matches becomes a hindrance rather than a benefit. Your playtime will be staggered out in awkward hourly intervals to check back on your boxes and play a match to get another one. The game is letting you spend resources to solve a problem that it created. Another area I thought was kind of weird was that the story mode is actually tied to the battle pass. You get XP from playing ranked and your dailies, and in addition to character outfits and common currencies, you also get more story content here. As you guessed it, there is a premium track too, but the story just requires the free one. Let's see how the story continues past the first intro cutscene. And it's a text exchange. That's the entire story segment. Now, these virtual texting features aren't anything new to gacha games as a way to introduce the cast members with side banter, but having it as the main portion of the story and so early as well? Because this makes me suspect that they did this so they didn't have to animate the 3D models, which if true, is pretty lazy. Although, you could argue that having a strictly PvP game isn't a bad thing, maybe it's just not for some people. I can understand that to a certain extent, but when you get to the gacha portion, that's when the game doesn't seem so fair anymore. There's a character and ability gacha banner. You'll get a decent amount of characters, and if you have 5 character tickets, you can just select one of your choosing. It's the abilities that's the tricky part. You'll either use the tickets or in-game gold to pull. A 10 pull is 1500 of it, but the subsequent banners offer only 3000 for 20 pulls for some reason. The rates are as follows: 5% for a UR, 20% for an SR, 75% for an R rarity. An N rarity exists too, just that you can't get it here. Admittedly, these are some high rates. The pity seems to be 88 pulls for a UR, but there's no spark or selectable pity, so it's possible to not get the one you want among all the rate ups. The current banner has 5 different UR skills all sharing the pool. In all fairness, some of the R rarity skills are pretty good too. Just keep in mind, a lot of these are character specific, so you don't get to use an ability on anyone. This is also one of those games where you can watch an ad for 5 free pulls every 8 hours. I haven't seen one of those in a while. A lot of gacha games don't have this, since it feels too much like a mobile game tactic. Nothing out of the ordinary for Square Enix though. Don't be too happy yet, as the rates for these 5 polls are gimped to 0.5% for the URs. I mean, you are getting free polls after all, they can't let it be that easy now. If you also want, you can pay for the Season Battle Pass to skip the ad so you get the 5 polls instantly. Now that's value. There's 2 recurring subscriptions you can buy. The Season Battle Pass that grants access to the Premium Battle Pass track, 6 crystal slots in the queue, and skipping the ad for the 5 polls. There's also a Boost Pass, where if it's active and you win a battle in ranked mode, you get triple the amount of Battle Pass XP. Generally, the skills themselves give better abilities the rarer they go. For example, I got an UR skill that lets me teleport to an enemy spawn crystal, so that's definitely a lot more useful than your typical power moves. Now, this is where it gets really bad. In order to increase the stats these abilities give you, you have to pull duplicates of them. If you have 1 copy of an ability, then the max level cap for it is 10. Pulling a dupe allows you to increase the cap to 20, and so on. This might look manageable so far until you realize that the absolute level cap for a skill, according to online sources, is almost 150. In addition, the amount of dupes needed to break past the upper limits is not linear. Looking at the same sources, you need exponentially more dupes to reach the last few limit breaks, up to 30 in total. How does this come into play? Well, the max level allowed for abilities is dependent on the PvP rank. Bronze only allows level 20 abilities, Silver allows 30, and so on. But that final rank does not have a limit at all. 2 teams with similar skill levels may face a disadvantage if the opposing side has more ability dupes. In addition, polling on the gacha actually gives the common currency to upgrade the abilities themselves, so it's always to your benefit to poll more times. Let's also review the cash shop. Square Enix has a weird history of making purchases for their products kinda hard. This game's cash shop looks quite different from your usual gacha games. The best deal in town will be the starter pack for just $2. This gets you enough paid coins to buy the premium battle pass. Look at all these rewards, you'll be really tempted to buy it. This is quite common in mobile games. I call it the icebreaker deal, the foot in the door. By investing a small portion of your own money, you're now more inclined to stick around to make sure your investment pays off, and makes it more likely that you're willing to spend more in the future. To be fair, a lot of gacha games do this, so I wouldn't criticize the game that much for doing something that's more or less normalized in this industry. The fine line I draw when it comes to bad game design is when the game locks quality of life features behind a recurring payment, which this game does in more than one way. I believe the plan for these types of games is to create a really good first impression, that the game is indeed well balanced and caters to every type of player. Then they hide the predatory stuff in a more covert way to get people's foot in the door so they feel more obligated to keep playing. Is it possible for a free player to somehow get really lucky and get enough ability dupes to compete in the highest ranks? Technically, yes. Realistically, no. That's kind of like me saying how it's possible for anyone to get rich instantly, just go win the jackpot at the lottery. Do I think there are actual strategies and tactics that will allow a skilled team to play on even playing fields? Yes, I do. At the same time, I think the 3v3 format of the PvP allows the game to disguise and cushion the predatory effects of this progression system. I believe the game has a fair and balanced PvP framework on the surface, but once you look a little deeper, the game is actually deceptively scummy with how it handles itself. What happens when you're stuck in the rankings? Well, in order to climb further, you gotta open up more ability loot crates and hope for a dupe to limit break past your current ability level caps. You don't want to play the PvP mode? Well, there's literally no other repeatable game modes with meaningful progression and content. As per usual with most IP-based gacha games, the goal is to create a semi-functional framework of a game to bring in fans of the franchise, then pull these practices to keep them engaged. Dissidia Duellum hides this in a very sneaky way, and I wonder if that was Square Enix's whole goal here. The story and graphical quality feels quite subpar compared to other titles released at around the same time. The progression system relies on pulling dupes to increase their power. Some critically important progression tools are locked behind a recurring subscription. Watching ads will give you more pulls with gimped rates, with ways to skip said ad if you pay for the same sub. They got a long spotty history of abandoning their mobile titles, and among the things I talked about here, these reasons make me doubt how good their intentions are. Anyways, that's my thoughts on the newest PvP Final Fantasy game after playing it for a week, so let me know what you think. If you want to catch more reviews and analysis on gacha games, subscribe to the channel. You can support what I do for as little as $2 a month on Patreon. As always, thank you for watching, be sure to spend moderately, and have fun out there.